Hi, Not Board Gamers, and welcome back to Not Board Gaming. I'm your host, I'm Mark. Now, in today's really very special episode, we're going to be previewing a game which comes to Kickstarter on the 19th of January. The link is going to be in the description above and in a card up there as well. And that game is, of course, Primal, The Awakening by Reggie Games. Now, you may have already seen a couple of preview videos out there for Primal, The Awakening. It is this fully cooperative 1 to 4 player monster hunting, monster combat, big boss battle game where you are going to take a control as a solo player of maybe 2 or more if you want to of your heroes as you fight against monsters such as Varaxon, this kind of fire-breathing dragon type thing, or maybe Toramat, this kind of made of stone looking lizard thing which is a real bugger to battle. And you're going to play either through a series of one-shot scenarios where you can set each monster up and there's varying grades of difficulties and just battle it that way, or there is also a campaign in the game as well. And this campaign can stretch between maybe 4 games or 10, 12, 15 games, depending on how well you do. And you will level up as you go through the campaign. There are ways to craft and get better items. And it's a really, really good way of doing it. However, what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about the solo game of Primal, The Awakening by Reggie Games, and as to whether you should back it on Kickstarter come the 19th of January. What I do want to say is obviously this is a preview copy of Primal, The Awakening. So many of the components that you see are still in progress. However, they are of a really, really good standard. And as you can see from the pictures I'm showing you now, in the preview copy, I got a couple of monsters, and there will be more in the full game. There are 4 heroes that come, and each hero is asymmetrical. They have a mild asymmetry, and they play off each other depending on the pairings that you choose there. There is a monster board, there are various tokens, there's the campaign elements, there's terrain to go on the board. And one thing that you'll notice that is very much lacking from a game like this, which you might imagine, is that there are no dice involved. That's right, there are no dice. You see, every character and every hero, should I say, comes with its own unique set of cards. And these cards absolutely drive the way that your characters work in the game. They will be responsible for your movement around the board. Positional play is really important. They will be responsible for attacking, for defending, for building wonderful combos together, not just with yourself, but playing off the other players that are in the game also. And that's the fantastic thing about it, is everything's driven by this deck of cards, which will, as you play the campaign, get different types of cards in its hand. However, we're getting slightly ahead of itself. Let's have a look a little bit more about how the game plays. You see, Primal, The Awakening is a static board game. There's no kind of real preamble in building up to fighting a monster. You are just going to fight a monster. You're going to set up the encounters according to either the quest that you're taking, i.e. the one-shot, or as part of your campaign. And here you have the kind of the static board map, and I'll just explain where everything is. So the monster is in the middle of the map, and you can see that it's got 4 quadrants. There are various terrain tiles that you can place on there based on what the scenario says. So there we have a bush, and here we have a couple of other plants which do various things. For example, this plant will give you 1 health back if you start on its particular quadrant. This plant will absolutely add 1 to your attack if you attack from that quadrant there. And as you can see, depending on what the scenario tells you, your fighters are going to start on a particular part of the quadrant here. And I've got 2 fighters. I've got Thorig here, who's got a hammer, and I've also got Derayon, who's got this giant massive sword here as well. Over here on this side you've got your timer, because what you've got to do is there are essentially 3 levels of monster that you have to beat, or the monster has 3 levels that you have to defeat, and you have to do it in 10 rounds. If you don't do it within those 10 rounds, then you have lost that particular battle. Also, if both of your fighters are KO'd at the same time, you have lost that particular battle. So the monster gets progressively harder as the game goes on as well. So as you defeat the first level, you're going to move on to the next level. It gets progressively harder, and then the final level is even harder, and he also demands even more points to kill for each level. So that kind of gives you the layout of the board. Let's talk about the players and the monster board and the actual monster board now. So as I mentioned earlier, as a solo player you have to choose 2 characters, and I've chosen Thoreg and Doraeon for my characters here. And you can see they've got a board that you will put their items on, and although the boards are exactly the same, the items that you put on there will be slightly different for each one. For example, each character will come with its own kind of major weapon card, and here we go. You can see that Thoreg has a hammer. It's a level 1 because we're just starting the game, and this hammer will do 3 damage every time he attacks using his hammer. And there's also, if we use a blue card there, it says if you're in the front sector, remove 1 additional struggle token, and we'll talk about that in a wee while. Also starts with a basic helmet and a basic armour. There we have 3 health on the helm and 5 health on the armour. That means that Thoreg and the other characters, when they start, can take 8 damage before they are KO'd. When they're KO'd, what happens is you're going to put a deplete token on each of those, and that will then effectively halve the amount of health that they get from those. Over here we have a mastery card, and each character has their unique mastery card, and this requires me to do a particular action twice. You can see the number 2 there. When I flip it over, it gives me some bonus actions. So for here, for Thoreg, it says when you stun the monster, place a counter on this card. So if I performed a stun action with him, I place one of these counters on there, and then when I've got 2 of that on there, I would flip it over to the mastery, and it gives me additional bonuses when I fight. Down here, each character is also going to start with a potion, and this is the Aylmore potion, and this says when I consume it, you choose a player in your sector to heal 2. If the attrition value of the topmost card in the attrition discard pile is 1, heal 4 instead, and I'll talk about the attrition deck in a wee while. As I mentioned, each character comes with their own deck of cards. Now these are all level 1. There are increased cards, so for example, if you're going through the campaign and your character has kind of increased, you can start using level 2 cards, but you start with pure level 1 cards, and you can see there are 4 colours on there. We have red, blue, green and yellow, and then you're going to deal yourself 5 of those cards as your starting hand, and you will do that for both of them. The final thing to show is this aggro token as well, because this dictates the first player, also dictates how the monster is going to move around the board a little bit as well at the end of your turn. And that aggro token starts arbitrarily when you first start the game, but when you play some of these cards, if you play one that's got a red in there, then the aggro token is going to move to you, so it does flit between the 2 players that you've got. So that's the player board. Let's have a look at the monster board now. So on the monster board, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to be fighting Viraxen, which is this guy. You can see at the top here, first of all, obviously Viraxen's own board. You can see at the top here there are a number of icons, and this is for how many players are playing the game, and also how much each it defeats, how many hit points it takes, to defeat each level. So for 2 players, and you're playing solo, it will always be 2. To get past level 1, I have to deal 18 hit points. To get past level 2, it's a further 24 hit points. And then to get past level 3, it's a further 28 hit points. So you can see that building a significant amount of damage into Viraxen is really, really, really key as well. Now here we have the behaviour deck, and you can see that this is effectively the monster's own kind of dynamic AI, if you like. This is how it moves, how it attacks you or responds to your attacks and your movements on the board. And you start off with a pile there, and you'll always have kind of 3 face downs, and depending what you do, you will flip these up at various points in the game. I'll explain how that works in a wee while. We've also got the stance cards as well here, and you can see for each level there's a different stance card. So we have a level 1, we have level 2, and we have level 3. Now on there, the little mark at the front, that's the way that the monster's going to face. So starting off, he's going to face the front of the board. And the areas in red are its vulnerability areas. So on the first stage for the monster, we can only attack him from the front and the back. Once we've delivered the 18 hit points, it then moves on to the next stage. You can see that it can be attacked from all flanks apart from the front, and then on the final stage you can attack the monster from whichever direction. However, each time that you go through a different stage, there is a when revealed kind of action on there, and when you get to stage 2, it says when revealed, Viraxen gains 2 struggle tokens, and we'll talk about struggle tokens. And then on stage 3, when you reveal it, it says place 1 fire terrain on each threatened sector, and that's if your guys have got threat involved. We've also got peril here, so this is kind of something that happens that's not good if you do a certain thing, and this changes as you go up the levels as well. So on this level 1 peril card here, it says when you trigger a behaviour card, and these are the behaviour cards here, when you trigger a behaviour card, players in the front sector reveal a yellow card from their hand or suffer 1 damage. And here we have kind of like a bonus card, if you like. This gives you an advantage if you do what's on there, an objective card. And it says, when a player places a red attack, attacking from the rear sector, place a counter on this card. When there are 2 counters per player on Let's Hit the Tail, the objective card is complete and Viraxen suffers 5 damage. So that's really good if you can get to do that. That delivers a hefty blow to him. Final thing to mention is the attrition deck. Okay, so when you played your cards, at the end of your turn, you're going to flip the attrition deck, and it's going to come up with a number. And depending on how many defense cards you played, that will then dictate as to whether you're going to take damage at the end of your turn or not. So, for example, if I've not played any defense cards, that's okay on this one. That's fine. Let's have a look. There, if I hadn't played any, I would have had to have played 1 to avoid damage. And here we go, 1, and then I think there's 2s in there as well. Whoops, here we go. Yeah, there's a 3, there's a 2 in there. So you can see this is the way that you cycle damage through your board. The other thing to know is that the monster is going to acquire these struggle tokens as they go through the game as well. And what these struggle tokens do is, first of all, they're not a timing mechanism, they allow the monster to actually inflict damage. So if there are ever 10 struggle tokens on there, what happens is the monster is going to inflict 1 damage to each player. But also, as we use these reaction cards or these behaviour cards, there are items on there which will then trigger if the monster has struggle tokens. So let's talk about the behaviour deck. So these behaviour cards are a really interesting way of kind of driving the monster throughout the game as you're attacking it and moving around the board and playing certain cards and starting from certain areas, or even at the end of your turn, then it will trigger some of these behaviour cards or these behaviour cards. And what you will do is you will trigger them based on the icon. So for example, this one here with the tail, if I start in the tail section, I will have to trigger this card before I start my turn. So if I did start in the tail section, I would flip this card over and I would resolve it, and it says on here, players in the rear section suffer 3 damage unless they have a green card in their hand. If hit the tail objective card is complete, this card has no effect and Viraxen suffers 5 damage. So again, great way to absolutely make sure that you're completing that objective card. The other thing as well is at the bottom you'll see a little icon at the bottom, and that's what these struggle tokens are for. So if there are struggle tokens at the bottom, you will also activate this icon, which is never a good thing. So I would spend 2 struggle tokens if available here, and it would say, to avoid damage, players must discard a green card instead. So it's not about just having one in your hand, you've actually got to discard it and obviously weaken your hand. This one would trigger if I played a red card, and there you can see there's some text on the back. This one would trigger if I played a blue card. Here we have if I started at the front. Here it is if I played a green card. This one triggers after any other behaviour card has been triggered. So you can start kind of chaining them together, which is really, really never any good. And this one here triggers at the end of the round. Now, also an interesting thing to note as well is that if there are 2 red cards in the display, and you play a red card from your hand, you actually have to trigger both red cards. You can choose the order without reading them in which way you want to trigger it, but you have to trigger the cards there. So you get this real kind of puzzle in terms of, should I play my red card or should I wait for that round, those cards to kind of recycle, because they do at the end of each round, or one of them recycles at the end of each round. So maybe it's not worth me playing my attack just now because I want to save it until the next round. So some really good at card interplay using that monster behaviour deck. The last thing to talk about is the terrain that goes up on there. So each scenario will tell you what terrain you need to put on here. And here you can see that we've got a bush, we've got the Bethanis, and also a Sirakai here as well. And they do slightly different things. So for example, if I was to place my character, my hero, into the area with the brush, it does say that when you start a turn in a sector with a brush terrain, or when you enter a sector with a brush terrain, you may decide to place your miniature onto the terrain tile. If you do, you name a player immediately, stop your turn, and that player then takes their turn before you carry on with your turn. Over here with the Bethanis, if I start my turn in a sector with a Bethanis terrain, I get to heal 1, and remove 1 damage token. And over here with the Sirakai, it says here, if I play an attack card and there is a Sirakai terrain in your sector, deal additional damage to the monster equal to your weapon level. Now the weapon level, as we know, this weapon delivers, there's a level 1 weapon, delivers 3 damage, but the weapon level is 1, so I would deliver 3 +1, so I would deliver 4 if I'm attacking the monster from that sector. Look, there are a number of kind of other tokens, etc., that we'll get used in terms of the game. As I mentioned, there's all the kind of health points, etc. But that's kind of the basics of what you get in the game of Primal: The Awakening. I think the best thing to do right now is show you around and let you show you exactly how this plays, because the card play between the two heroes that you're playing with is just absolutely fantastic. So just before we go into a round of gameplay, I'm just going to explain a little bit about how the cards work themselves. You see, your cards, your hand of cards, and these are all level 1 cards, come in 4 colours. The red and the blue cards are your offensive cards, if you like. The red one allows you to attack using your weapons power to attack on there, and there'll be additional bonuses that are listed in the kind of keywords that are on there as well. And then the blue one allows you to manoeuvre, and manoeuvring allows you to remove some of those struggle tokens from the bad guy, from the monster. There are also dodge and parry cards as well, which are your yellow and green cards. And whilst these don't necessarily inherently allow you to make an attack on the creature, what they do is allow you, when you get to the attrition cards that you pull, and I mentioned those earlier, depending on how many of these you played, that can negate the effect of those attrition cards. Now, to play a card, it's a simple case of paying the stamina cost. So each card in its top left hand corner up there has got a stamina cost, and what you will do is at the bottom of each card there are also some of these little stamina symbols as well, these little teardrops if you like. So if I wanted to play this particular card from my hand, I would have to pay 2 teardrops. As you can see, it's got a stamina cost of 2, or 2 stamina tokens. So in the rest of these cards here, or these 4 cards, ideally my hand will have 5 cards in it. That means I could play these 2 cards, I could pay using these 2 cards and they'd go into my discard pile, or I could pay using this card, which has got 3 on there, and that would go into my discard pile, and any overspend, of course, is lost, so you don't get to keep the overspend. And every time you play a card, you have to do that. Now, some of the cards have a 0 stamina value, and that's good. Some of them have an X value, and depending on how much stamina you pay for it, gives you the bonus that's on the X value there. So the cards, as I say, very intuitive and a great way of absolutely driving your hand forward. Out of the kind of card, the starting hand of 5, you're going to end up using at least 2 of those potentially to pay to move, because stamina you need for everything. One of the first things you need to do is to move. If you don't move, you get a threat token, because the creature's noticed you, and a threat token is one of these, basically. And what this does is when it gets the attrition part of the game, when you pull the attrition cards out, you pull 2 and choose the highest number there, so it kind of makes you a little bit more vulnerable to attrition. So you would have to pay a stamina to move and potentially deplete a card, and that then leaves you with 4 cards in your hand. Sometimes you need to stay exactly where you are, or sometimes you're positioning yourself so that your co-op player, your other player, can get into the best position, and the creature's going to turn and move around the board, and it becomes really, really clever. Anyway, let's head into the game. Now I've explained how the cards work. So the first thing to happen is the monster's turn, and the monster turn is not actually a big thing. The first thing that's going to happen in the monster turn is it's going to take 2 of these struggle tokens, 1 struggle token per player, and we'll put that on the monster board, and that's how it starts to build up these struggle tokens that it will use throughout the game with its behaviour cards. The next thing it would do, from round 2 onwards, it won't happen in round 1, in your very first round, is it would recycle 1 of its behaviour cards on the monster board. Although it won't happen in round 1, I'll show you how that works. So as I say, it wouldn't happen in round 1, but if you can see at the bottom of each of these behaviour cards, there's a number. And all you would do is you would take the lowest number, so there we go, that would be the number 2, place that in the discard pile, and replace it with another card, and that's how you would do it from round 2 onwards. So you can see that the Viraxen, he's built his 2 struggle tokens up there, so he's already got 2 struggle tokens, and although it wouldn't normally happen in round 1, I've recycled 1 of his cards and kept that deck flowing. So that's the monster turn. Now we're going to move over to the heroes' turns. Just want to talk about a couple of keywords that you'll see on some of the cards as well. So here for Derayon, there's an assist keyword, and here on Thoreg, there's a reaction keyword as well. So the assist keyword, what that does is, if that's on your card whilst the other player is playing, you can discard that card, and that will allow them to draw an additional card into their hand, so the other player to draw an additional card into their hand, so that's assisting the other player. The reaction is what you would play, so when the active player plays a double attack card in their sequence, I can discard Disruption to stun the monster, so I could then create a reaction there, if you like, once the other player's done it. So you'll see those keywords crop up potentially throughout the game. Some of them we'll use and some of them we won't use. Right, so now over to the first turn. So I started out with my deck of 5 cards, and as I mentioned earlier, I've got to spend the stamina to pay the cost of the card on top there. So the first thing I want to do is move. The first thing you have to do is, if you want to, is move, should I say. If I don't move, I gain a threat token, which is one of these, which increases my chance of getting some early damage. But the beauty about the game is the positional play. I want to move, I want the creature to follow me, so that then Durayon can move potentially the other way and attack him from the back there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pay this blue card, I think, here. I don't need that, it's a reaction card, so that I can move Thoreg from there to there. Now, based on the fact that I've got some bush terrain there, I could actually go in there and let Durayon take his turn, but I don't want to, you see. What I want is I want the creature to turn to me. If we look at the kind of positional play on this level 1 here, I can only attack him from the front and from the back, and at the moment I'm at the flank. And although Durayon's down there, I don't want him to get hurt. So what we're going to do now is potentially, so we've moved, and you can only move to one adjacent place at the time, is I potentially want to play this card, so I've at least got an attrition card a card there to combat my attrition as well. And then what I could do is I could stun here. But that's going to cost me 3, and that's going to take all of these cards here. So I think what I will do at this stage, in fact, let's stun. So I'm going to pay these 2 cards to now do a stun action, which is the next in my sequence here. And for stunning, what I do, first of all, is I am going to take away one of Viraxen's struggle tokens. So there we go. I can remove one of the struggle tokens. There we go. Also, there's a special power on Thoreg's hammer, which says here, if you're in the front sector, remove 1 additional token. I wasn't. I was in the side sector. I was on the flank, so that's no good. But what I can also do is I can use a stun token here. What this stun token allows me to do is it allows me to play this stun token on one of these cards, and it means it won't happen. It won't occur for the rest of this round. So nobody's going to start at the tail end. So it's either 2 red cards. So we'll put that on one of the red cards. It doesn't really matter just now. So that's my sequence completed. I've discarded 3 cards, paid for the stamina on these cards here. I made a move, and of course paid for the 3 stamina effect on that. So now I have to look for attrition. So what I'm going to do is draw a card from the attrition deck, and if I have equal to or less than the number of these types of cards played, then I'm okay. If I have less than the number that's on this card, then I take a damage. So let's have a look. And that says 1. So there we go. I'm okay. I have 1 of these cards. I have 1 on the number of attrition there. So I've not got any damage. The final thing that happens now is we're going to clear the sequence played, deal myself 5 new cards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Doesn't matter. I can look at those if I want, because there may be something on there that allows me to assist. There isn't the next player. And then what happens is that the monster turns towards the person who has the aggro token. Now, it was arbitrarily decided at the beginning. This will change as the game goes on. So the monster now turns towards Thoreg, which is great, because now we're going to move on to Durayon's turn. And what I want to do for Durayon is to move him into here and hopefully attack from the back. Okay, so now we're over to Durayon's turn, and Durayon is still in this sector here because that's where he started. We have his cards. We've got Thoreg over there, and here we have the cards for Durayon. Now, as I say, if I don't move, I can choose not to move. I stay in this sector, but I get a threat token, which will increase my attrition potential here. So what I am going to do is I'm going to use a card to move. So let's have a look at these cards. We've got a reactive guard, got a jumping slice, we got double slash, retreat, and thwart. So one of these got reaction on there, which means that when an ally moves a certain number of struggle tokens, I may discard thwart from my hand and do something. That doesn't happen now, and that's got assist, where I said earlier I could use it to assist. So what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to spend this card just to move, and we're going to move, there we go, the rayon towards the back there. So now I think I'm going to take a bit of a gamble and see if I can issue some damage to Varaxen. Okay, so the first one is, okay, so I've got 2 damage cards here that I can play, and I think I do have enough. So that one needs 2 for that, and I need 1 for that, so I can play it. But sequence becomes important here. You see, on this one here, we got this little black arrow and that red. This says that I can perform the action on this, and if I then follow it up with another red card, so if I play another red card after this card, and that's what that black means, if it was facing the other way, it would be, if I played a red card prior to it, I can deal 3 additional weapon damage. Now, my weapon is the Great Sword, and it has a damage of 3, but by weapon level, it means the level of the weapon. I've got a level 1 weapon, so this would allow me to then, if I played these in the right instance, actually deal 6 damage to Varaxen. But if we look over here, I know I put a stun token on one of those, does mean I will get a reaction card coming into play. So let's try this then first of all. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to use that card to place that card down, and that is the slash deal slash there. So I'm going to deal 3 damage to Varaxen. You don't actually trigger the card until you've fully done everything on here. So the first thing we're going to do is deal 3 damage to Varaxen. 1, 2, 3, and we're off. And that means out of his 18 possible that I need to get rid of level 1, I've already got rid of him there. I've already got him down by 3. However, because I've played a red card, I now have to trigger this red card. The other one's got a stun token on, won't work. So let's have a look at what this says. It says, Claw, Firestorm. Varaxen immediately turns towards the active player and place 1 fire terrain in the active sector. So he's going to turn there, and we're going to place a fire terrain. You see what's happened here? And there's also, here he can spend a struggle token. So he's got 1 left, spend that struggle token, and he will get whatever it says here. The active player suffers 1 fire damage unless they have a green in their sequence. I don't have a green in my sequence. Let's just complete that. So that goes now into the discard pile, and that card goes on there. You can see that's got a symbol on there, which means at the end of this round, so after Durayon's turn, I would then have to I'm going to have to resolve that card. What that fire token means is that I can now no longer play any cards from my hand. So that is effectively Durayon's turn gone, which is a shame because I just line myself up for a double hit there. So that's my turn gone. So what we'll do is put those into the discard pile, draw myself up to... Oh no, I've got to do my attrition yet, sorry. So we're doing attrition now. And the attrition is 2 defense cards. I played no defense cards, so therefore Durayon takes 1 hit on there. Now I'm going to draw back up to my level. 3, 4, 5 cards there. And now we're going to resolve this end of turn creature behaviour card. There we go. And what I should have done here, sorry, previously, before he turned, I forgot to trigger the effects on this peril card. And it said, when you trigger a behaviour card, the player in the front sector, so bear in mind he was that way, so the player in the front sector would have been Thoreg, must reveal a yellow card from their hand. So there we go, they've got a yellow card in their hand, so that goes away. That's dropped him down by 1. Okay, and that's fine. So then he turned because of that card. I'm now going to... reveal this card, but also I've got the peril card which says when you trigger a behaviour card, players in the front sector reveal a yellow card from their hand. So let's have a look. He doesn't have any yellow cards in his hand or suffer 1 damage. So therefore that is yet another damage that's gone onto Durayon. And now we have to do this this end of round behaviour card here. So it's another assault card. It's a claw. Players in the front sector immediately move or they suffer 1 damage. And then Varaxon turns to the player with less defense cards in their hand. If there were any struggle tokens left, then the Varaxon would use that struggle token, and the player would have to pay 2 to move. As it stands, I have to move from here now. I've got to pay a card from my hand, so I'm going to start the next round with 1 card. I've got, let's have a look, a couple of duplicates there, so let's get rid of that. Let's move me into that sector up there. Let's get rid of that card and put that on there. That end of round stun token now moves because, of course, he's not stunned anymore. Oh, and one thing I forgot to do on here when he got stunned is I've got to put a token on there. When I've got 2, I get to use his special ability. And that's the end of the first round. Wow. Okay. So, things didn't go too well for our hardy adventurers. We thought we were doing okay. I thought I'd got a double blow coming. Didn't actually happen. We've now positioned round here, so and it's not gone exactly the way that we wanted it to go. Obviously, Durayon now has 2 damage also as well. So now we move back to the monster turn, and the first thing that happens on the monster turn is he takes 2 struggle tokens, 1 per player. We put that on the board there, and we're going to cycle the monster deck. So looking here, this is the one that has the lowest number. It's got a number 3. That gets cycled, and that moves there. So what we have now up here on the behaviour deck, if anybody starts in front of the jaws, that one activates. If anybody plays a red card, those activate. The peril is still in play. We have various bits around the board, and now we move on to round 2. Now, because Durayon didn't play any red cards, they were all grey cards that he played in his sequence, that means that the aggro token still stays with Thoreg. And that's a round of Primal the Awakening. So as you can see, the game absolutely excels at tactical combat. This is kind of Monster Hunter, the video game, in board game form. I can't imagine that when the Monster Hunter board game comes out or gets announced later this year, it's going to give us good an experience of this. I really enjoy this wonderfully kind of interlinking card play that you have. And bear in mind, this is just a one-shot scenario here. As you progress through the game and you decide to do the campaign or different one-shots, it's going to give you different levels of things. So you can start upgrading your helm and your armour and maybe the potions that you get as well. You'll start to create resources or collect resources as well, and there's a wealth of resources that you collect because at some point you will open these kind of the Alchemist and the Fireforge, and this allows you to then start crafting kind of new things and weapons and potions. So you can craft the Flame Tongue here if you've got the Fireforge. You need 1 blood and 2 Zima for that, and that's really good because as the kind of campaign progresses, you're going to start getting rewards as you do certain things in each and every game. Of course, your characters are going to start getting stronger as well. We're all starting here with level 1 cards, but as the game goes on, you will, and the campaign progresses, you will start to upgrade your characters, and there's a character sheet that you can fill out as well, which helps you go through that. But the upkeep is relatively low. We're not talking Kingdom Death Monster levels of upkeep here, where you're looking at kind of keeping up 4 different characters as a minimum in Kingdom Death Monster. In reality, you've probably got loads of characters on the go at any one time. You're not looking at keeping this fully functioning village with all these various forgers and blacksmiths and weapon crafters, etc., as you do in Kingdom Death Monster. But I mention Kingdom Death Monster because a lot of people think this is going to give you the same thing, and you can see it pays homage to Kingdom Death Monster, but it gives a drastically different feeling. What you got here is more of an arcade type feel to it, whereas Kingdom Death Monster really is more of an RPG. So the game is going to continue then for a maximum of 10 rounds. Each round you're going to tick that timer down, and that signifies another round is over. If you reach the 10th round and you haven't defeated the monster, that's it, you've lost. If both of your heroes are KO'd at the same time, that's it, you've lost. Now, KOing a hero does not necessarily mean it's the end of the hero. If you get one hero KO'd, basically it takes them 2 turns to regroup. When they do regroup, they get rid of all of their wounds that they've accumulated. So, at the moment they've got 8, a maximum of 8 they can get, so they get rid of all of those. But you place a deplete token, as I mentioned earlier, on their armour, and that then makes them half as strong next time, so then they can only take 4 damage before they get KO'd a second time. And actually, in the first playing against Viraxen, if you work it right, maybe you get 1 KO tactically, and you want to do that as well as part of your strategy. But you could still possibly work with the other hero that's on there. Wait until your second hero's up and then deliver those final blows. So yeah, however, if you defeat the monster in these 10 rounds, and that's it, you've won that particular scenario, that part of the campaign, or that one shot, and that's great. You can pat yourself on the back. Viraxen is possibly the easiest one of the 2 that I've got here. And we know that this guy, who's called, I keep forgetting his name, Toramat, is significantly harder. The scenery is different, and you get this real joy in kind of progressing through. Okay, so closing thoughts on Primal, The Awakening by Reggie Games. As you can probably tell from what I've said in this preview, I think it's an absolutely fantastic game. And from a solo perspective, managing the 2 heroes and interplaying the cards between the 2 is really, really rewarding. When you're getting to move these cards around and play 1 card off another hero and build up some successful combos, so you're doing a double attack, and somebody's giving you an assist, so you get to draw another card and it allows you to do this, that and the other. And you string these combos together, and you've positioned one hero so that the other hero ends up being in exactly the right place. There's a real kind of deep sense of joy in that. The creatures on here provide a decent amount of challenge, and I know there are various creatures coming out in the full game itself. The behaviour deck is really smart. You have this dynamic adaptive AI. It's not quite an automa, but what it does do is it reacts to the type of, or the position of where you are, or the type of card that you're playing, and delivers a punch there for you. And all this is happening on this relatively small scale, kind of static board. And you look at the board and you think, how does such an amount of gameplay come out of that one small board? And that's the beauty of the design of the game. Everything really interlocks very, very well. The ability to upgrade your characters throughout this campaign, or these one-shots that you're doing by using the Forge or various cards. You get elements given to you if you defeat certain creatures. The fact that you can use potions to heal yourself, or you can, as I say, you can upgrade your weapons or your armor. There's just so much that you can do in this game if you want to. If not, if you're just looking to set it up and spend about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour battling a creature, then that's absolutely fine as well. And when you look at this, a typical game from setup to playing to tear down is probably just over an hour. And if you think the campaign is going to take you, 10, 12, 15 games, something like that, it's not going to, we're not talking Gloomhaven levels of commitment here for a really, really, not just a solid, but a fantastic gaming experience here. There is so much going on. The cards themselves, the decks themselves, it's not a deck builder, it's more of a mild deck construction system, or maybe even call it deck crafting, whatever you want to call it. You're going to add progressively to your decks, and you're going to hope that certain cards come out. Certainly, kind of playing the red cards, which give you the aggro token, or the cards with the red icon, should I say, in the corner, which give you the aggro token. That can be really strategic or tactically important for you to switch the aggro to another player. There's so many ways to absolutely kind of maximise how you're playing this game, and I can see it when people get their hands on this as being a game that people are going to start becoming really, really proficient at, and start to come up with some really, really good strategies. From a solo perspective, I think that, well, for me, certainly managing 2 heroes is about as much as I want to do. I'm sure that you could play with the 4 heroes and manage the 4, but when you're looking at kind of 5 cards per hero, and you're trying to decide as to whether that assist or that reaction is going to help out you on this particular go, then I think looking at 2 hands or 2 heroes for that is good. There's no option to play 2 solo, and that's because of how these cards work. It's a co-op solo game, and that's really good. You're getting 2 people going out hunting a monster, working off each other, and that's absolutely fantastic. I can't say enough good things about Primal, The Awakening. I think from what I've seen in the quality of the miniatures, the quality and the artwork on the cards is kind of almost duochrome, or whatever you want to call it, double colour artwork on there with really evocative stuff. the quality of everything, the board, the miniatures, the tokens, and even these that are in preview stage are just really, really good. The fact that the rule books, so you have a learn to play rule book as well as a campaign rule book, so learn to play eases you into the game. It tells you everything you need to do. Literally, kind of reading through that learn to play rulebook and setting it up and playing through the first time was an absolute breeze. And then the campaign rulebook says, right, okay, so now you've done that, you've done the prologue, which is always going to be via Acton. Then let's move on to the next the campaign rules, and let's get used to how the campaign works. And that's a great way of easing you into there. I can see infinite expansions coming out for this game as well. I can see that if it's successful, and it really deserves to be very successful, that there will be so many future kind of expansions and pieces for it. Hopefully not as scarce as the other kind of game with 3 letters that we don't talk about, the KDM one. But yeah, it's just got so much potential to have so much life in it. And I think that, you know, when this launches on the 19th of January, as a solo player, you're really, really going to want to investigate and back this game, because the sooner that you can get it into your hands, the sooner that you're going to start having this great tactical experience with this potential campaign if you want to link it onto the back end. And there we go. That is Primal The Awakening by Reggie Games, designed by Tommaso Mondadori and Alberto Parisi. Look, I've spoken to Tommaso via email a few times when he was sorting me out with the prototype copy, and I just want to say thank you very much to Tommaso and everybody involved at Reggie Games. This is a first-rate product. Please check this out on Kickstarter when it launches on the 19th of January. You're going to want to back this game as a solo player. You're going to want to back this game. So thank you very much for joining me on this really special episode, this preview of Primal The Awakening, having a look at the solo game for all my fellow solo players out there. This has been Not Board Gaming. My name's Mark. Please remember you can like and subscribe to us on Facebook, on Instagram, follow us on YouTube as well. It's Not Board Gaming, always BORED. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Check out our other videos, and in the meantime, if you can't find anybody else to play with, there's nothing wrong with playing with yourselves. Until next time, bye-bye.